Rome, a battlefield. Legionaries locked in formation, short blades flashing. This weapon, the gladius. It carved out an empire. For centuries, swords like this decided who ruled and who didn't. But swords weren't always around. Someone, somewhere, had to invent the very first one. So how did humans actually get from nothing to this? Let's go back. Way before Rome. Before knights. Before Vikings. Before any of that, humans didn't have swords at all. They had knives. Short stone blades. Later, short copper daggers. And here's the thing. Going from a dagger to a sword sounds simple. Just make it longer, right? Actually, no. It's way harder than that. Here's the issue nobody thinks about. Early copper is soft, almost bendy compared to what came later. Make a short dagger out of it? Fine, it holds up. But stretch that same metal into a long blade and it becomes a real problem. It bends. It snaps. In a fight, that's not a weapon, that's a liability. So for a long time, humans simply couldn't make a sword, even if they wanted to. The metal itself wouldn't allow it. This wasn't a design problem, it was a materials problem. So when did someone finally crack it? In the 1980s, archaeologists digging at a site called Arslantepe in eastern Turkey found something that changed everything we thought we knew. Inside an ancient palace complex, they uncovered a stash of 9 blades, swords and daggers buried together. These weapons dated back to somewhere between 3300 and 3100 BCE. That's over 5,000 years old. Before this discovery, most historians thought true swords didn't show up until around 1500 BCE. Arslantepe blew that timeline apart. It pushed the invention of the sword back by well over 1,000 years. These blades were 45 to 60 centimeters long enough to count as real short swords, not just oversized daggers. So how did they finally solve the bendy metal problem? Alloying, mixing copper with another element to make it stronger. The Arslantepe swords were made from an arsenic copper alloy, one of the very earliest versions of what we'd eventually just call bronze. That mixture made the metal harder, tougher, able to hold its shape as a longer blade without folding or snapping under pressure. This is the actual moment the sword became physically possible. Not a new idea, a new material. And get this, 3 of those 9 blades were inlaid with silver, beautifully decorated, which tells us something important. These weren't just tools, they were symbols. Whoever owned these swords wanted people to know it. Picture the world at that moment. Early cities, early rulers, early elites trying to hold on to power. A sword wasn't just useful in a fight, it was a statement. Owning a weapon that took advanced skill, rare materials, and serious craftsmanship to make. That separated you from everyone else immediately. Researchers studying Arslantepe see this pattern clearly. As early leadership and social hierarchy started forming, these elaborate weapons show up right alongside them. Function and status fused into one object. Bronze swords didn't stay on top forever though. Bronze has a weakness. Making it requires tin, and tin is rare. In a lot of regions, you'd have to trade for it, sometimes across huge distances. Eventually, humans figured out how to smelt iron, and iron had a massive advantage. It's everywhere. Way more common than tin in way more places on Earth. Somewhere between about 1200 and 800 BCE, depending on the region, iron swords started replacing bronze ones. Harder, cheaper to produce, easier to access. That shift didn't happen all at once or in one place. It happened gradually, independently, in different cultures figuring out the same solution. Which brings us back to where we started. By the time Roman legionaries were marching into battle with the gladius, swords were already an ancient technology, thousands of years old. Rome didn't invent the sword, they just perfected one version of it for their own kind of warfare. Same story for the knights of medieval Europe with their long straight blades. Same for Viking warriors with their pattern welded iron swords. Same much later for samurai in Japan with the katana. Every single one of these iconic weapons is really just a later chapter in a story that started with 9 strange little blades buried in a palace in Turkey 5,000 years ago. So next time you see a sword in a movie, a museum, or a video game, remember what actually had to happen first. Someone had to solve a problem with bending metal. Someone had to figure out exactly the right alloy at exactly the right ratio through what was probably years of trial and error. And somewhere in that process, a weapon that decided the fate of empires for thousands
thousands of years afterward was born, not from a legendary hero, not from a single flash of genius, from metallurgy, patience, and a very old, very human need to be more powerful than the person standing next to you. If this changed how you'll look at every sword you see from now on, subscribe, because I dig into the strangest, most human moments buried in our deep past every single week.